There are certain sounds you learn to recognize when you live in a house. The refrigerator turning on, the pipes knocking inside the walls, the wind pushing against a window, the floor creaking when the temperature changes. You learn all of them because when you're alone, your brain becomes very good at explaining things. At least, that's what I used to believe. My name is Daniel, and this happened on a Friday night in October. I was 27 years old, living in a small 2-story house with my parents. It wasn't a big house. 3 bedrooms upstairs, a living room, kitchen, bathroom, and small laundry room downstairs. Nothing special. The kind of house you could find in almost any neighborhood. My parents had gone to my aunt's house for the weekend. I couldn't go because I had work on Saturday morning. So they left me alone. They joked about it before leaving. My mother told me not to forget to lock the doors. My father told me not to burn the house down while they were gone. I laughed. I told them I was an adult and could survive one night alone. At the time, I had no idea how much I would regret saying that. They left around 7:30 that evening. I watched their car disappear at the end of the street. Then I went inside. I locked the front door, checked the back door, checked the windows. Then I did what anyone would do. I ordered food. I turned on the television, and I enjoyed having the house completely to myself. For the first few hours, nothing happened. I ate dinner on the couch. I watched videos on my phone. I played games. Around 10:45, I went upstairs to get my laptop. That's when I noticed the first strange thing. My bedroom door was open. That sounds insignificant, but I always kept it closed. Always. I had a habit of closing it whenever I left the room. I stood in the hallway staring at it. I tried to remember if I'd left it open earlier. I couldn't, but I didn't think much of it. I walked inside, grabbed my laptop, and went back downstairs. At 11:20, I received a text from my mother. "Everything okay?" I replied, "Yeah, just watching TV." A few seconds later, another message appeared. "Don't forget to lock the upstairs bathroom window." I looked at the message for a moment, then I laughed. My mother had reminded me about that window dozens of times. I replied, "Already checked everything." She sent a thumbs up. I put my phone down and continued watching TV. Then, at exactly 11:47, I heard footsteps upstairs. 3 slow steps from the hallway. I paused the television. I stared toward the staircase. Nothing. I waited. Then I heard another step. I immediately thought of my parents. For a split second, I wondered if they'd somehow come home early. I stood up. "Mom?" No answer. I walked toward the stairs. "Hey, Dad?" Nothing. I climbed halfway up. The upstairs hallway was dark. I could see the bathroom door, my bedroom, my parents' bedroom. Everything looked normal. I stood there listening. Nothing. I laughed quietly at myself. "Great," I whispered. "Now I'm scared of my own house." I went back downstairs, but I didn't turn the television back on. Instead, I checked my phone. No messages. No missed calls. Nothing. I sat on the couch and tried to convince myself that the sound had come from the pipes. Old houses make strange noises. That's normal. At least, that's what I told myself. About 10 minutes later, I heard it again. One step, then another. This time, it sounded closer to the staircase. I froze. My eyes slowly moved toward the stairs. Then I heard something that made my stomach drop. A voice, very quietly. "Daniel?" I stopped breathing. It sounded like my mother. I stared at the staircase. "Mom?" Nothing. Then the voice came again. "Daniel?" This time it was louder, and it was definitely coming from upstairs. I stood there for several seconds. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. Then my brain started doing what brains do when they're afraid. It searched for an explanation. Maybe my mother had come home. Maybe she was playing a joke. Maybe she had somehow forgotten something and returned. I grabbed my phone. I called her. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Then she answered. Hello? I couldn't speak. Daniel? I finally said. Mom? Where are you? There was a pause. Then she laughed. I'm at Aunt Lisa's. Why? I looked toward the staircase. Did you come home? What? Never mind. She sounded confused. Are you okay? Yeah. I hung up. I didn't tell her what I'd heard. I didn't want to sound ridiculous. I went into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking slightly. Then my phone vibrated. A message from my mother. Why would I come home? We're still eating dinner. I stared at that message. Then I heard something upstairs. A door opening. Slowly, I looked toward the ceiling, and then I heard my mother's voice again. Daniel? This time, it sounded exactly like her. I ran outside. I didn't think. I didn't grab my shoes. I didn't grab my jacket. I just opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. I stood there in the cold night air. My phone was still in my hand. I called my father. He answered immediately. What's wrong? I looked at the house. Every window was dark. I think someone is inside. My father stopped talking. What? I heard someone upstairs. Did you check? No. Good. Don't. His voice changed. He wasn't joking anymore. Get in your car. I looked at the driveway. My car was parked beside the house. Should I call the police? Yes. I was about to do it when something caught my attention. The upstairs window. My bedroom window. The curtain moved. Just slightly. I stared at it. There's someone looking out my bedroom window. My father said, Daniel, get in your car, right now. I walked toward the driveway, then stopped, because the curtain moved again. This time, I saw a shape behind it. A person, standing perfectly still, watching me. I couldn't see the face, but I knew it was there. I backed away, then my phone vibrated. A text message from my mother. Daniel, don't go upstairs. I stared at the screen. My heart began pounding. I called her immediately. She answered. Daniel? Mom, did you send me that message? What message? The one saying not to go upstairs. There was silence. Then she said, I didn't send that. I looked down at my phone. The message was still there. Same number. My mother's number. I showed my father. He told me to stay outside, so I did. I stood in the driveway for nearly 20 minutes. I called the police. I explained everything. I felt embarrassed describing it. I expected them to think I was imagining things, but they arrived. 2 officers walked around the house. They checked every door, every window, the garage, the backyard. They went inside. I stayed outside. After about 10 minutes, 1 officer came back. Nobody's here. I felt a wave of relief. Are you sure? He nodded. Everything's locked. I looked toward my bedroom window. The curtain was still. Maybe it was a shadow. The officer shrugged. Could have been. I almost laughed. Almost. Because I knew what I'd seen. But there was nothing I could prove. The officers left. My father stayed on the phone with me. He told me to go to a hotel. I agreed. I walked toward my car. Then I stopped. I suddenly remembered something. My laptop. My father said, "Forget it. I need it for work. Daniel, I'll be 5 minutes." No. I looked at the house. "I'll grab it and leave." My father sighed. "Fine, but don't go upstairs." I unlocked the front door. The house was completely dark. I turned on the lights. Everything looked normal. Almost too normal. I walked into the living room. My laptop was upstairs. I stood at the bottom of the staircase. I remembered what my father had said. Don't go upstairs. So I didn't. Instead, I called him. "Where's the spare laptop?" "Office." I looked toward the small room underneath the staircase. I walked inside. The office was dark. I turned on the light. Then I saw it. My laptop was sitting on the desk. I picked it up, and something fell from underneath it. A photograph. I bent down. It was an old family photo. My parents. Me. My childhood bedroom. I hadn't seen that picture in years. I picked it up. Then I noticed something. Someone had written on the back. I turned it over. There were 3 words. "He knows you." I dropped it. My phone slipped from my hand. I stood completely still. Then I heard footsteps upstairs. 1, 2, 3, slowly moving toward the staircase. I grabbed my phone. "Daniel?" It was my father. His voice came through the speaker. "Get out," I whispered. "There's someone upstairs." "I know." "What?" I just heard it through the phone. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then my mother's voice came from upstairs. "Daniel?" My father heard it. I heard him whisper, "Oh my God." Then the voice said, "Your father wants you to come upstairs." My blood turned cold. My father hadn't said that. He'd told me to leave. I slowly backed toward the front door. Then the voice spoke again. This time, it sounded like my father. "Daniel." I stopped. "Come upstairs." My father was still on the phone, and I could hear him breathing. "Don't listen to it," he whispered. The voice upstairs laughed. Not loudly, just a small, quiet laugh. Then it said, "He's lying." I ran. I opened the front door and sprinted to my car. I didn't look back. I got inside, locked the doors, started the engine, and drove. I didn't stop until I reached a hotel nearly 20 minutes away. My parents drove back that night. We stayed in a hotel together. The next morning, my father went back to the house with the police. They searched it again. Nothing. No broken windows. No damaged locks. No footprints. Nothing. But my father found something. Something that changed the entire story. It was in the upstairs hallway. On the wall, there was a small rectangular section where the paint looked newer. My father said he hadn't noticed it before. He touched it. The paint was slightly loose, so he pulled it. Behind it was a narrow opening, a hidden space between the walls, and inside, there was a chair, a blanket, several empty water bottles, food wrappers, and dozens of photographs. Photographs of our family. Some were old, some were recent. My father found one of me sleeping, taken from inside my bedroom. Another showed my mother cooking in the kitchen. Another showed my father working in the garage. Someone had been watching us for a long time. The police searched the entire house again. They found a small entrance to the hidden space. It could be accessed through the attic, but they couldn't find the person. Then one officer found something else. A phone. Old. Cracked. Still charged. They checked it. There were hundreds of recordings. Videos of our family. Videos taken inside our house. But the final recording was different. It was recorded that night. At 11:52 p.m., the officer played it for my father. The video showed my living room. The camera was positioned behind the couch. It showed me sitting there watching television. Then I stood up, walked toward the kitchen, and disappeared from view. The camera stayed there for several seconds. Then someone stepped into frame. A man. Thin. Pale. His hair was messy. He was wearing dark clothes. He stood behind the couch, looking directly at the camera. Then he whispered, "He's alone now." The video ended, but there was another recording. Recorded 12 minutes later. The camera was upstairs, facing the staircase. My father told me he didn't want to watch it, but the police did. The recording showed the dark staircase. Nothing happened for nearly a minute. Then, someone appeared at the top. It was the man. He slowly walked down the stairs. He stopped halfway and looked directly toward the camera. Then he smiled and said, "Daniel." The recording ended. The police never found him. They never figured out how long he'd been living inside the house. My parents sold the house several months later. I moved into an apartment across town. For a while, everything was fine. I eventually convinced myself that it was over, that whoever had been inside the house was gone, that I was safe. Until 6 months later, it was another Friday night. I was alone in my apartment. I was sitting on the couch watching television. I heard a noise from the hallway. I ignored it. Then I heard footsteps. 1, 2, 3. I slowly turned toward the hallway. Nothing. I laughed. I told myself I was being stupid. Then my phone vibrated. I looked at the screen. A message. Unknown number. Just one sentence. "You shouldn't have left the house." I stared at it. My hands went cold. Another message arrived. "I liked it there." Then another. "But your new place is nice too." I stood up. I checked the front door. Locked. I checked the windows. Locked. Then I noticed something. My bedroom door was open. I always kept it closed. I walked toward it. Slowly, my phone vibrated again. I looked down. A photograph had been sent. It was a picture of me, standing in my living room, taken from behind. I stared at the photograph. Then I looked up. The hallway was empty. My phone vibrated again. Another photograph. This one showed my bedroom. Another, my kitchen. Another, my front door. And then the final photograph arrived. It showed me standing in the hallway, holding my phone exactly where I was standing. I looked at the picture, then slowly looked behind me. Nothing. I turned back toward the bedroom. The door was still open, and from inside the dark room, I heard my own voice whisper, "Daniel." I couldn't move. The voice came again, but this time, it wasn't asking for me. It was imitating me. "Daniel?" I backed away. Then I heard the words that still keep me awake whenever I'm alone. The voice whispered, "I know you're home." And that's when I realized something. The man had never been trapped inside our old house. He had been following us, and somehow he knew exactly where I lived. Even now, I still don't know who he was. I don't know how he got into our house. I don't know how long he had been watching my family, and I don't know how he found my new apartment. But there is one thing I know. If you're ever home alone and you hear someone call your name from another room, don't answer. Because if you know you're the only person in the house, then whatever is calling you already knows you're there.